Hi, this is Mr. Montesi coming to you on Friday morning. Sorry I am not in class today. I have some personal issues that I had to take care of. But in light of that, I know that there is plenty for you guys to do. And I know that some of you have been asking about grades, but you have to see there's a couple of high scoring assignments this week. And it involves the reading and annotating of Animal Farm, the novel that we are going to read. So you can't make it through the rest of the 9 weeks if you're under the impression that you're not going to have to read this book, or that you can just spark note it or cliff note it and get the answers that you want. Because it doesn't work that way. That's not how reading works. Reading is when you become involved in the book yourself. You place yourself inside of the book and you're part of it. And I'm going to read a little bit from Animal Farm, and you don't have to listen to it if you don't want. But oftentimes I find, and I think a lot of other people do as well, that when somebody does good narration, good voice over work, it's very interesting to listen to somebody tell a story. And it's a lot easier than reading it. So if you can find an audio version of Animal Farm with somebody's voice that you really like to listen to, yeah, then it's worth listening to it. Because if you put the words that you're hearing with words that you might be looking at in the book, you are taking part in the reading process. You're not fully engaging yourself reading, but you're at least being part of it by seeing mentally and letting your brain make the connections between what you see and what you listen to. Your audio and your visual processing, both combined, come into the understanding of reading. And that's what really reading is all about. It's to understand what it is that you're taking in. You're taking words in, which of course you know are just representations of other things in life. The things that we feel, the things that we smell, the things that we touch, taste, and listen to, and all the senses. And the only way that we can share those things with other people are by speaking them. And by speaking them, we're speaking words. And essentially, words on a page are the same as words that you come out of your mouth, except for that you have to actually take the process of making those words come out on the page. And very often, it's challenging to do that because the words cannot come out exactly like you think them. Because if you've ever had a great dream, you might wake up thinking this would make a great book or story or movie or something, and maybe it would. But when you sit down and you attempt to write it out, that wild idea that you had, it doesn't come out the same way. That's where the talent or the art in being a writer comes in. People that have practiced at making dreams on paper come out real, and they find that they have to rewrite it 100 times before it really sounds like something interesting enough that somebody might read. And what makes Animal Farm probably, for sure on the 100 books, greatest books of all time. I haven't Googled that, but I'm going to right after I get done with this to see where it ranks. But it's in the top 100 for sure. And it's because when you read it, it's readable. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to try not to look stupid by looking directly at the screen at the words, but of course I have to. I don't have the book memorized by any stretch. So it's chapter 1, okay? I'm just going to read a couple of pages, but to try to read it in a way that if you follow the punctuation and you read it like it's supposed to be read, then you create an image in your mind of what's taking place. Don't just read it for the sake of looking at words and knowing what the words mean. Try to picture in your mind this farm, okay, this barn where these animals live, and the fantasy that the animals might actually be able to communicate. And after hours, when the farmer goes to bed, the animals start talking, which is what kind of turned me on to the book. I read this book a very, very long time ago for the first time, and reread it about 2 weeks ago for the second time. Liked it a lot better now as a grown old guy. But I remember back then when I read it, the thing that fascinated me about the book, enough to read it and want to read it, was the fact that these animals live on a farm and talk. And that was before like Disney came along and made all these movies where all the animals talk all the time. And all the toys talk all the time. I remember when Toy Story came out, it was just like, wow, that's just so easy to imagine with a kid's imagination that your toys can talk to each other. Because when I was a kid, I played with toy soldiers and toy cars and stuff, and I always made up dialogues, you know, where the soldiers were talking, they were fighting the cowboys, the Indians, or whatever. The imagination, the creativity that goes into becoming a writer is equal to being a painter, in my opinion, an artist. It is truly an art. And for someone your age and someone in school, if your thought is that you just hate it completely and you hate it in general, then it's going to be very difficult for you to understand right now. But that'll create problems for you down the line, because you're going to get to a point sometime where you're going to want to really be creative with your thoughts, and you're going to want to try to put that on paper. And you're going to have a difficult time putting it on paper because you really haven't had enough practice at doing it. So that's why writing is very important in the reading process, because they're really closely linked, right? It's like a two-sided coin. That's how I look at it. Reading on one side and writing on the other side. They're the same process. So let me just end this with, as far as your weekly assignments go, you have to read Animal Farm, what I'm about to read, and you have to answer the questions. And you can really only answer the questions if you read it, and the questions need to be answered in complete sentences. Because even though you'll see right now when I read this that this is a very easy read, it has punctuation and it has places where the author wants you to really kind of stop and pay attention and visualize in your mind what's going on inside this barn, and this idea, this crazy idea that these animals can talk about something. Okay? You've got plenty of stuff to do for the week, so there's no additional assignment for this week. Please keep turning assignments in because I'm grading them. Okay? And I'll be grading them this weekend. All right, so the story is Animal Farm, and it was written quite a while ago. Chapter 1. Mr. Jones of the Manor Farm had locked the hen houses for the night, but was too drunk to remember to shut the pop holes. With the ring of light from his lantern dancing from side to side, he lurched across the yard, kicked off his boots at the back door, drew himself a last glass of beer from the barrel in a scullery, and made his way up to bed, where Mrs. Jones was already snoring. As soon as the light in the bedroom went out, there was a stirring and a fluttering all through the farm buildings. Word had gone around during the day that old Major, the prize middle white boar, had had a strange dream on the previous night and wished to communicate it to the other animals. It had been agreed that they should all meet in the big barn as soon as Mr. Jones was safely out of the way. Old Major, so he was always called, though the name under which he had been exhibited was Willingdon Beauty, was so highly regarded in the farm that everyone was quite ready to lose an hour's sleep in order to hear what he had to say. At the end of the big barn, on a sort of raised platform, Major was already ensconced on his bed of straw under a lantern which hung from a beam. He was 12 years old and had lately grown rather stout, but he was still a majestic-looking pig. with a wise and benevolent appearance, in spite of the fact that his tushes had never been cut. A tush is a bone that grows in the boar's tooth, like sideways like that, and I guess it can get in the way of their eating or something. And so typically I think what farmers do is they cut it off, like a antler. And so it makes eating a little better for the boar. I think that's what the tush is. It's a horn. Before long, the other animals began to arrive and make themselves comfortable after their different fashions. First came the 3 dogs, Bluebell, Jessie, and Pincher, and then the pigs, who settled down in the straw immediately in front of the platform. The hens perched themselves on the windowsills, the pigeons fluttered up to the rafters, the sheep and cows lay down behind the pigs and began to chew the cud. The 2 cart horses, Boxer and Clover, came in together, walking very slowly and setting down their vast hairy hoofs with great care, lest there should be some small animal concealed in the straw. Okay, so I'm going to stop reading there, and I'm going to go back very quickly and make some annotation type of suggestions to you. Okay? So in comparing this to the Stalin paper, Joseph Stalin paper, okay? Mr. Jones, who owns the farm, in the story that the farm is going to be overthrown by the animals, right? Okay, so this story is an allegory comparing it to the Russian Revolution. And in the Russian Revolution, the people that were being taken over were the king of Russia, okay? We call it a czar, actually. Nicholas II. So, who's going to be taken over in the animal farm if we're making the connection? It's going to be Mr. Jones, the farmer. So, Mr. Jones represents Nicholas II. Old Major, the big bad boar, he's going to be one of the ones doing the overtaking. So the person who really started the idea of taking over or starting the revolution was Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, but he died a few years later. So if Major, the boar, Old Major, represents Lenin, we can almost assume that somewhere very soon in this book he will die as well, and he does. So we've already identified 2 areas there that overlap to show you what happened in the Stalin piece as well, okay? So then, when the animals come into the barn, where they're seated, this is one of the questions. In the barn, why would they be seating where they're seating? Well, we know right now that the person who's running the farm is this big pig with tusks, big bad looking pig, right? So when the other pigs come in, they sit right up front. So who gets the best view at a concert? The person sitting up front, obviously. So they get the best seat. So we can make the assumption now that the pigs are the highest on the pecking order on the farm. They come first. They're the smartest, or they're the most favored because they're in the front, right? And then as the animals come in and they're seated back and back and back, that's the order of importance that they are on the farm's, order list and how good you are, all right? So in society, it's almost identical, isn't it? The pecking order. There's people that are poor, dirt poor, right? And they're looked upon as being low class. And the only thing worse that society says is, if you're homeless. And then you have like the billionaires like Trump, who probably have never, spent a day of their life without something to eat. So really, this isn't about being rich or poor. Although actually in the book it is a lot like it is about being rich and poor. The book speaks to how people are taken care of, and if there is this, if you live in a society where the government is supposed to take care of you, right? You would expect that they would take care of you, and that's what happens in a communistic country. In a capitalist country like the United States, we're responsible for the most part for becoming successful in life, or becoming something in life. So when you think about it, whether you plan on going on to school or not, that really doesn't matter. Getting a good paying job does matter. So there's tons of way to support yourself and have a great life without going to college. For sure, college is not for everyone. But there are other things there are other types of learning that you have to do to get the trade or the vocations, and they both involve reading. That's the one thing everything has in common. The common link to everything is reading. And as my sign in the classroom said, vocabulary equals intellect. Not intelligence necessarily. You can be a very smart person without having intellect. If you're curious, YouTube intellect and see what comes up. And then you'll have an idea what I'm talking about. Okay? Hope you have a great weekend. Next weekend, we're going to have some more Animal Farm and try to make it fun for you. Try to read it with imagination when you read it. Really. Try to enjoy it. And try to just picture in your mind a fantasy world where these animals can talk. And not only are they talking, but they're doing things like human beings are doing it. And you can see that some of it is really foolish. And it's like, why do they bother doing that? Why is that important? And you realize it's really not. And then you think of your own life and you go, yeah, but that resembles my own life. Maybe there are things in your own life that you shouldn't take so seriously, right? Think about it. With all the bad stuff that's going on right now, right, and all the crappy stuff that we have to deal with, who really gets by in a time like this? I think I have the answer. It's someone who takes it with humor. Make it funny, make it laugh at it. Laugh at the situation that you're in, laugh at the situation we're all in. We have no control over it, so you might as well just laugh about it and just say, nothing I can do about it. Just roll with it. Take care, have a good weekend, and be safe.